Robert Chen clutched his weathered leather wallet as he walked into Luxury Motors, his shoes clicking against the polished marble floor. At 72, he still carried himself with quiet dignity despite his modest appearance. Faded khakis and a well-worn blue sweater that his late wife Margaret had given him years ago. The gleaming new cars surrounded him like silent sentinels. Robert had spent 2 years saving for this moment. After driving the same Toyota Corolla for 20 years, he was finally ready to buy his dream car, a brand new Mercedes-Benz S-Class. The $120,000 in his savings account represented countless careful decisions and delayed gratifications. "Can I help you?" A young salesman in an expensive suit approached, his name tag reading Blake. His smile didn't reach his eyes as he gave Robert a dismissive once-over. "Yes, I'm interested in the S-Class," Robert said, pointing to the silver sedan that had caught his eye. Blake snickered, exchanging glances with another salesman nearby. "Sir, this is the Mercedes-Benz S-Class. It starts at $110,000. Perhaps I can show you something more suitable. We have some nice used Toyotas." Robert felt his cheeks burn. "I'm aware of the price. I'd like to test drive it, please." "Listen, sir," Blake said, his voice dripping with condescension. "We don't do test drives without proof of funds. We can't risk wasting time with window shoppers." By now, several other employees had gathered, poorly concealing their amusement. The sales manager, Derek Thompson, walked over with a smirk. "Is there a problem here?" Thompson asked, though his tone suggested he'd already decided Robert was the problem. "I have the money," Robert said quietly, reaching for his bank statements. His hands trembled slightly, not from age, but from humiliation. "Sir, this is a luxury car dealership," Thompson announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We serve a certain caliber of client. I'm going to have to ask you to leave before you make our actual customers uncomfortable." Robert stood there, the bank statements crumpled in his fist as snickers echoed through the showroom. His eyes burned with unshed tears as he thought of Margaret. She would have squeezed his hand and told him to hold his head high. "Very well," he said softly, turning to leave. At the door he paused and looked back. "You know, my wife always said that character reveals itself in how you treat those you think can't benefit you." That night, Robert sat in his study, surrounded by framed photographs and memories. But instead of his usual evening tea, he was on the phone with his son, Michael, a successful investment banker in New York. "They did what?" Michael's voice crackled with anger over the speaker. "It's fine, son. I'll just try another dealership," Robert sighed. "No, Dad, it's not fine. You work too hard to be treated like that." There was a pause, followed by the sound of typing. "Did you know Luxury Motors is actually struggling? Their parent company is looking to offload them. Their sales have been dropping for years because of their terrible customer service." Robert sat up straighter, an idea forming. "Tell me more." "Their parent company, Automax Corp., is trying to sell the dealership for $5 million. That's actually undervalued considering their inventory and real estate." Michael's voice took on an excited edge. "Dad, you know that tech company stock you invested in when I advised you 20 years ago?" Robert nodded, though his son couldn't see him. Those shares in a then small tech company had been worth $50,000 back then, nearly his entire savings at the time. Margaret had trusted his decision, even when others called him foolish. Now those shares were worth over $8 million. "Son, are you thinking what I'm thinking?" "I'll make some calls tonight," Michael said. "We can have the paperwork ready tomorrow." The next morning, Robert put on his best suit, the one he'd worn to Margaret's funeral. He styled his silver hair neatly and picked up his old briefcase. This time, when he walked into Luxury Motors, his steps echoed with purpose. Blake was the first to notice him. "Sir, I thought we made it clear yesterday." "Good morning," Robert interrupted politely. I'm here to see Derek Thompson. He doesn't have time for—" "Oh, I think he'll make time," Robert said, his voice firm but calm. "Tell him Robert Chen is here, the new owner of Luxury Motors." Blake's face went pale. Behind him, other employees stopped what they were doing, whispers spreading across the showroom floor. Thompson burst out of his office, his face a mask of disbelief. "What is this nonsense?" Robert opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "These are the ownership transfer documents, signed this morning. Automax Corp was quite happy to accept my offer." He turned to address the gathered staff. "As my first act as owner, I'm afraid I'll have to make some personnel changes." The showroom fell silent. Mr. Thompson, Mr. Blake, and anyone else who participated in yesterday's entertainment, you have until the end of the day to clear out your desks. Blake stepped forward, stuttering. "Sir, please, I have a family." "So do many of the people you've likely humiliated over the years," Robert replied. "I suggest you remember that in your next position. Sometimes the person you look down on today might be signing your paycheck tomorrow." As the dismissed employees sullenly gathered their belongings, Robert turned to the remaining staff. "For those staying, we're going to make some changes. Every customer who walks through that door will be treated with respect, regardless of their appearance or assumed wealth. We'll be implementing new training programs and a mystery shopper system to ensure this happens." He walked over to the silver S-Class he'd admired yesterday. "And this will be my first purchase as owner. I trust that won't be a problem." Later that afternoon, Robert sat behind the wheel of his new Mercedes, breathing in the scent of leather and success. He placed Margaret's photo on the dashboard and smiled. "You were right, my love," he whispered. "Character does reveal itself, and sometimes justice comes in unexpected ways." Over the next year, Luxury Motors transformed under Robert's leadership. Sales increased as word spread about their exceptional customer service. Robert implemented a program to help seniors navigate car purchases and established a scholarship fund for underprivileged youth interested in automotive careers. Blake and Thompson's replacements were chosen specifically for their track record of treating all customers with dignity. Robert made sure every employee understood that success wasn't just measured in sales figures, but in the respect and kindness shown to each person who walked through their doors. One day, almost exactly a year after the incident, an elderly woman in shabby clothes walked into the dealership. The new sales team welcomed her warmly, taking time to show her every car she was interested in. She turned out to be a wealthy widow looking to buy 3 cars for her grandchildren's college graduation. As Robert watched the sale unfold from his office, he smiled, thinking of how different things were now. His phone buzzed, a text from Michael. "Proud of you, Dad. Mum would be too." Robert looked at Margaret's photo on his desk. The dealership's success was sweet, but the real victory was in changing its culture. Every time he saw a customer leave with a smile, regardless of whether they made a purchase, he knew he'd turned a moment of humiliation into something meaningful. That evening, as Robert drove home in his S-Class, he reflected on how life had come full circle. The sting of that day's humiliation had faded, replaced by the satisfaction of knowing he'd made a difference. He hadn't bought the dealership just for revenge. He'd done it to ensure no one else would feel the way he had. As he pulled into his driveway, Robert noticed his neighbor struggling with some grocery bags. He quickly parked and went to help her, remembering how a simple act of kindness could change someone's entire day. "Thank you, Robert," she said. "I saw you drive up in that beautiful car. You know, I've been thinking of getting a new one myself, but I was nervous about going to a dealership at my age." Robert smiled warmly. "I know just the place. And I promise you'll be treated like family." The story of Luxury Motors spread throughout the community, becoming something of a local legend. But for Robert, the greatest reward wasn't the profitable business or even the satisfaction of proving his critics wrong. It was knowing that he'd created a place where everyone regardless of their appearance or background, would be treated with the dignity they deserved. Every morning, before the dealership opened, Robert would walk through the showroom, straightening the already perfect displays and making sure Margaret's framed quote hung prominently near the entrance. Character reveals itself in how you treat those you think can't benefit you. And sometimes when a customer would ask about the quote, Robert would smile and say, "That's quite a story. Let me tell you about it while we look at some cars." The lesson wasn't lost on anyone who heard it. Success and wealth don't define a person's worth, and karma has a way of coming full circle. But most importantly, it taught that the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about making sure others don't face the same treatment you once endured. Robert never saw Blake or Thompson again, but he heard through the grapevine that they both eventually found jobs at other dealerships. He hoped they'd learned from their experience and treated their new customers better. After all, you never know when the next person walking through your door might be another Robert Chen. As for the S-Class that started it all, Robert still drives it every day, keeping it immaculately maintained. But now, when people compliment him on the car, he doesn't talk about its luxury features or impressive performance. Instead, he tells them about the dealership where they can buy one too, a place where every customer is treated like a millionaire, whether they are one or not. The end of this story isn't really about wealth or revenge. It's about dignity, respect, and the power of turning a negative experience into positive change. Robert Chen didn't just buy a dealership, he bought an opportunity to make the world a little bit better, one customer at a time. And somewhere, he knew Margaret was smiling down on him, proud that he'd taken her wisdom about character and turned it into something that touched so many lives. Every night before closing, Robert would walk through the showroom one last time, straightening a few already straight brochures, adjusting a perfectly positioned car, and glancing at Margaret's photo in his office. The dealership had become more than just a business. It was a testament to treating people right, a legacy that would continue long after he was gone, and that, he knew, was worth more than all the luxury cars in the world.